Hello and welcome to Faithfully Stampin' with Jennifer Helm. I am Jennifer Helm, the Faithful Stamper, independent demonstrator with Stampin' Up. Today I have for you a quick and easy sketch card. This was inspired by Stampin' Pretty, and it's a very simple design, not a lot of fancy fussy cutting. Really, once you get your papers cut, you only have one cut that you need to make in order to put this card together. So let's go ahead and get started and I'll show you how to do it. So you'll need a card base for your card. It doesn't matter which style. I opted for the long and skinny style this time, which normally it's opposite from what I normally choose, but it really doesn't matter. You can do either one. And I'm using Night of Navy, so all I need to do is fold my card, and this then gets set to the side. Next, I need a panel of cardstock or designer series paper. I could go with either one. That is 5 1/4 by 4. I have a piece of balmy blue here, and this would be fine on my card as it is, but I want to add a little something around the edge because I am going to have a little bit of a border that shows, and I just didn't want it to be plain. So I'm going to grab some scrap paper here. And the stamps that I'm using today is a new one that's coming in our January 2023 holiday catalog. It is called Seaside Bay. Lots of beautiful images here. I'm going to use the pearl, or it could be a bubble, for the outside edge of my cardstock here. I'm not going to stamp the whole thing, so don't worry, you won't have to reach for that fast forward button. I'm just going to stamp around the edges. I'm going to double stamp in spots. I'm going to stamp partway off the paper just to give me different looks. This would be fun, I think. You could do a whole panel with this idea. I love the bubble look, and you can keep stamping as many times as you want. And I don't have to go all over because I know most of this is going to be covered up by the next piece of paper we're going to talk about. But this way I have a little bit different look, a little more texture and depth to my card front. All right, so almost done. I'm going to squeeze in a few more there. Okay, so that's that step. Now, for the most part, you do not need any special adhesive. I'm going to just use my Stampin' Seal Plus. This is my favorite to put on most of my panels tonight. So this gets put on the front like so. And then the next piece I need is a panel of either cardstock or designer series paper. Again, I have some options. This is 4 1/2 inches wide by 3 1/2 inches tall. So before you cut your paper, make sure you're looking at the direction. If you've got a directional print, just make sure you're cutting to the right dimension. Now this one is slightly different from the sample here. It's just another page in the pack of paper. Same colors really, just slightly. This is more like little brush stroke, and this was more kind of strokes across the paper. But I figured, let's check that one out too. Look at the shine on the back side. I almost hate to cover that up. So again, just Stampin' Seal Plus for this. And this gets centered on that panel of balmy blue. So you can see just how adding that little bit of texture around the edges kind of makes a different look on the card. Next up, you need a square of designer series paper. You could always go with cardstock for this too, but the DSP is fun. 2 1/4 inches square. Dimensional or directional paper you'll have to be careful with. We're going to cut this on the diagonal. We want to create this triangle here that we're going to put on the card. So just keep that in mind. You might have to take a look at it and see if there's a direction that you want to cut one way or the other. But this is the only cutting, like specific cutting, that we're doing today on this card. So I'm just going to bring over my paper trimmer for 1 second. And let me see here. I think, yep, I'm going to cut this way. So you can always shift the direction if you need to. I'm just laying it point to point down on my paper trimmers, cutting line there. And then a quick cut, I've got 2 triangles. I have one that I can use on another card, and I'll show you some more options with that a little bit later. But this is what I'm going to glue on the card now. Here's where you might want to change glue just for a minute, because when we flip it over, you want to get glue on these corners so they don't pull up. And sometimes I just use my tape runner, but so I don't have to fool with that tonight. I'm going to grab some Tombow green glue and just add a little bit. And this way, my silicone mat is protecting my work surface. And also, if I do run a little off the corner, I won't ruin my table. But I can get a little closer to my corners. Don't need a lot of glue. The rule of thumb is dot, dot, not a lot. But I love my silicone mat because if I do get glue on it, I can just run it under some water and clean it right off. And by not using a lot of glue, I don't need to let this dry for a long time. It gives me a little bit of flexibility in case I move it around a little bit when I press it down. But I don't have any glue seeping out, and I'm just ready to go. Okay. Now we're going to work on some decoration for the front. I pre-cut a scallop circle in Night of Navy and then one in basic white. We're just going to layer these together. You can use any shape that you like. This is probably about a 2-inch diameter circle. You can use a little bigger. I wouldn't really want to go much bigger. Maybe 3 inches would be the max. Remember, this is only 3.5 inches tall. I don't know that I'd go much smaller, but you can experiment. You can use different shapes. So there is the first step. I'm going to take some dimensionals here and pop this on the card using those. You can glue everything flat on the card if that's your style, or you can add dimension in different steps. I'm going to center this here on the card front, and then I'm going to add another pre-stamped image. This is a sandpiper, I am told. I stamped it in Night of Navy. Isn't it pretty? I love that stamp and just the detail that you get. So I'm going to switch to mini dimensionals for this little guy. I can get him a little closer to his head and his tail with the small ones. And then he's going to go right in the center of my circle once I get all the backing off. Just like that. I decided I wanted to add a banner. This is going to be a sympathy card, and I'm using another sneak peek set. This is our sending support stamp set from our celebration that's coming in January and February of 2023. Lots of very nice wording here. So this is going to be a sympathy card today. I'm going to use Night of Navy ink. My colors all came out of the DSP, so Balmy Blue and Night of Navy. And that's largely the cardstock colors I went with as well. And so I'm just going to stamp on a strip of cardstock. That looks a little crooked to me, a little close to the bottom, so I'm going to flip it over. I think I'm going to turn it around and start again. That looks very crooked. I'm using about 1/2 inch tall for my sentiment strip here today. Actually, I happen to have another scrap handy, so I'm going to switch to that one. I think that looks a little straighter. 1/2 inch tall, and it can be whatever length you need it to be. This is maybe 2.5 inches long, but I'm going to trim it down a little bit. But you can always go with a wider or taller strip based on the sentiment that you are using. Much better. Now, I will admit, I am not good at cutting edges of cardstock into banners. I wish I was. I like to cheat and use an old retired punch, but let's see, I'm going to trim this a little bit. Hopefully I didn't trim off too much. So let's see, I'm going to nip down the center here and just kind of come in from the sides and see if this works. Oh, I did pretty good that time. Whew. Normally I'm off center and one side's longer than the other. Not my skill set right here, but little glue on the back. And I'm going to slip this right here. Since I use those dimensionals, I've got some play. I can put it underneath like that. Now for the inside of the card, I do want to have a sentiment that goes along with it. So my sentiment says, sending loving thoughts and prayers. So there we go. Now, this would be fine the way it is, but I like to add a little something. I usually do some corner accents or maybe a strip of paper. But what I decided for this card, so I'm going to go back to my balmy blue ink for a minute. And there's a lovely stamp set, or a stamp in the stamp set. It's Seaside Bay, that has these speckles, the sand look and the seashells. So I'm just going to come along the bottom of the card and stamp a little bit here. And what a nice little accent that is, very subtle, but still just a little bit of something to go on the card. While I've got my balmy blue ink out one last time, I'm gonna grab the crab stamp that's part of this set. I live on the East Coast, so this is gonna be very popular here by the Chesapeake Bay. So there's my accent for the front of the card. My sentiment panel is going to go on the inside of the card. And then I have one finishing touch. The card honestly could be done at this point, but I'm gonna add just a little bit of bling. The embellishments that go with this set are flat adhesive backed pearls. It's like you took a round pearl and smushed it with your finger. They're very low profile. So I'm just gonna put a couple of these on my card. So they come in 2 different sizes, and they have a very nice iridescent sheen to them. But they sit a little bit flatter, so they're better for mailing. And just like that, I have a sympathy card ready to go. Sadly, I need to put one in the mail tomorrow morning. But here we go. There's the 2 cards with the different DSP for the background. So you can see these go together in no time at all. It'll take you longer to figure out your coordinating paper than anything else. So I do have a couple more samples to show you. First of all, this is great for any occasion. Christmas time is coming up, so here is a Christmas version. Again, I used some stamps to accent around the edge of my cardstock, and I used a fussy cut image out of some designer series paper here. Shifted my banner to the top, and again added some embellishments. So you definitely have some options. I like to give you a sketch idea that then you can springboard and do anything you like with it. That's the fun with these cards. If you are careful, you can change the orientation on the card. It doesn't work with every design, but here I was able to make it work. I skipped a step. I used designer series paper for my base, but I left off that 4.5 by 3.5 inch panel. I maybe could have added it, but I decided I didn't need it. And I used both halves of my 2.25 inch square, one at the top and one at the bottom. I shifted my little banner to the top. And here is another sneak peek at an upcoming celebration item. And so it's a little busy for me, but it works. I used the other stamp in that stamp set and created this card. This is the other image. There's 2 images in the country stamp set for celebration. Here, I did again go with the DSP 5.25 by 4, but I increased the size of my triangle, or my square that I then cut into triangles, to 2.5 inches. And I switched since it was directional paper, I used the top half of the square and cut it diagonally and put it up here, because if I'd put it on the bottom, it would have been upside down. So just keep that in mind with your directional paper. If you've cut one and you've realized, well, that's not gonna be able to work, put it up at the top instead of the bottom, and then you still haven't wasted the paper. Added some brushed metallic embellishments. And then here I did add a strip of DSP inside the card. And then last but not least, these frames this is from the framed floret set I wanted to mention. I just started playing with these today, really like the frame here, and I'll show you the other one in the set here with our final card. So here's a thank you card. Again, I skipped that panel in the middle, but I used a nice wide oval frame. This one's got a little bit of detail. I added some die cuts here on the side and put some bling on there too. Added a bow. I did keep it very simple on the inside of the card. But you can see these are great for any occasion, and you definitely have some play in how fancy or how simple you make them and how many steps you use on the card. So I hope you enjoyed learning how to do this quick, simple sketch card. Quick and simple sometimes is the best way to go if you're in a hurry, or sometimes you just don't want to think that hard about making cards. Not everything has to be fussy cut and fancy folded. So I hope you enjoyed these. If you haven't already, I would love for you to subscribe to this YouTube channel. You can click the notification bell and be notified each time a video is posted here. If you are a fan of Facebook, you can find me as The Faithful Stamper. I do live videos there, and you can see specials and different things that Stampin' Up! Has to offer. Thank you so much for watching. Take care and happy crafting.